All right, listeners, got a special treat for you today. Guy that I've gotten to know, cool dude. I really like the way he operates, his business, his website is freaking one of the best I've seen. I'm looking at it up here on the screen. But Mr. Curtis Larson, how you doing this afternoon, Curtis?
I'm doing good, Preston. Thanks for having me. It's fun to be able to be on this since I listened to this, especially when I was first starting out my home inspection business in 2018.
No, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. That's cool. And man, I was excited to have you on here. Well, give us a little background, Curtis. How did you I did a little pre-show stalking. Says you were an accountant, but what's your background? How did you get into home inspection?
So I was actually an accountant. I mean, I've done a lot of different jobs. I always joke that I have more college credits than anyone else without a college degree. I was told if I had a teacher at a private school, ended up becoming an accountant, and I've a lot of college credits. But so I jumped around position to position. So I worked in education. I had a business with my father. That's where I learned accounting, and then I was accounting and wanting to get out of it. I missed face to face just interactions with people and clients, and I didn't have any customer service there. I was behind a computer. I'm good with numbers and spreadsheets, but it wasn't very fulfilling. I'd be like, hey, do you guys want to go grab a beer? And they'd be like, no, I got to get home to my dog. Like that's what my colleagues were like. And so and I'm like, no, just like one beer. We can just have one
You
beer
don't
and go
strike
home.
me as an accountant type.
Yeah. So in 2018, a good friend of mine was getting into home inspecting and asked me to do kind of like a business valuation on a home inspection business that he was kind of looking at purchasing from his uncles. And so when I was doing that, I looked at it, I'm like, hey, this is actually something I think I'd really like to do. I think it'd be really enjoyable. It would give me that personal, like working independently as well as being able to be customer service based and just out there on a regular basis. And it also gave me an enormous amount of flexibility with young children to be able to coach every sports team that they have, to be on every field trip. And my wife carried the benefits. So all they had to do was bring in a paycheck.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I love all those benefits too. I mean, there's benefits. I never missed a kid's game that I can think of unless I mean, I missed many. I was probably 95% of them. Now there's a downside to it, come Sunday evening, sometimes I'm dealing with some problem, but I can be off Monday at 10 o'clock to go see an award ceremony or
Right.
something so it's a double-edged sword. So tell us, how did you go? I mean, I think it's pretty incredible. 2018. I mean, it's still 2023, so roughly 4.5 years. I mean, man, you've built an entire team here. I mean, how did you go? I mean, like I was a one-man shop probably for the first 5, 6 years in business. How did you go from getting in this business to building a successful team that you have now?
So my initial thought behind becoming a home inspector was I immediately, when I was doing a business valuation, saw that there was a huge need where it was just one man shops, mom and pop
Right.
shops, one person.
Majority still is today. Majority of them.
Yeah. And it's not that that is an incorrect way of doing business. You can make incredible money. You can have incredible flexibility with that, but it wasn't what my desire was. So my initials, I like looked at a bunch of small businesses and I was like, hey, I would love to be like an 8-person team. 5 inspectors, 3 office staff, we're one big happy family. Everyone's busy, but we can all have each other's backs and we can have this great community. So initially, from the minute I started, that was my goal. My first year I came in, my goal was like, hey, can I do 75 inspections? I started April 1st of 2018 is when I opened my doors, and I was like, hey, can I do 75 inspections? I got my 75th inspection on New Year's Eve that day that year. So I was like, yes. I was like, I didn't want to work on New Year's Eve, but I'm like, that's 75. I hit my goal. So I went after it. The next year I did 212. I think it was
Wow.
212 inspections the second year. And it was a nice amount of inspections. It was one of those things where I was like now I'm starting to lose some flexibility because I never said no. I still hadn't missed an inspection. I was never like, hey, I can't do this. I was able to fit it in. And so I started planning as we went into 2020 that I was going to start making my first hire, find someone part time. And that's actually when I came across our lead inspector, Blake. And at that point, he had reached out to me actually New Year's Eve of 2019. He just slid into my DMs and he goes, "Hey, I just finished up this building inspection class, and I just want to like thinking about starting my own company. Found your website. Would you be interested in just sitting down for coffee with me?" So we sat down for coffee. I'm like, "Hey, I like this guy," and everything that he was saying aligned with where I was going. And I'm like, "Hey, if you want that freedom, like I'm just telling you, like I'm already experiencing, like that's pretty hard to do with a one man show." So I'm like, "Why don't
Yes.
you come along with me? And if you ever want to leave, you can." And he's still with me today, so it's worked out pretty good. And then we just slowly built from there.
Wow. So Blake was your first. I'm looking at your website. He's your inspector manager now. Was he your first hire?
He was my first hire. Yep. Actually,
Wow.
I mean,
You
I
knew
hired a
him?
contractor right before that because I went to IEB in San Diego. They had RGT. And when I was going to RGT, I was like, "Oh, I don't want to miss out on like, I'm probably gonna have 2 inspections this week, but it's February, Minnesota. There's not much going on." But I'm like, I don't want to lose out. So I'm like, my buddy that was an inspector, I'm like, "Hey, Zach, um, how about I give you a 60% cut of anything you bring in?" He's like, "Okay, sure." So he took 60%, and away we went for those first couple. But then I trained Blake over the next several months. He was my first full-time hire, and I had to be
Okay.
creative making that happen because it's a huge transition going from 1 inspectors to 2 inspectors. Way harder than going from 10 to 12 or 15 in my
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and I want to talk about that because there's a lot of guys out there that struggle. They're one man shop, and I still think that's the majority out there. And I was probably 5 or 6 years before I ever went multi inspector, and it's a hard jump. I mean, how hard was it to go and I know it's like you go into business because you feel like you can it's the entrepreneurial story and journey, right? Like you feel like you can do something better than the way it's currently being done, right? But
Mhm.
then eventually you don't have enough bandwidth and you've got to hire people to do things, and there's this feeling that, well, nobody can do it as good as I can. How did you deal with that? How did and obviously it's worked out for you, but did you struggle with any of those type things?
Yeah, so I've always just been a member of team sports ever since I was a little kid growing up. And with that being said, and sports are still a large part of my life and my kids' lives. Um, and something I learned from sports is that there's always someone better than you. It doesn't matter who you are unless you're lucky and you get to be Michael Jordan or LeBron James and even they're arguing who's the best there. Like someone's always better than you. So I just try never to let my ego get in the way with that stuff. I believe that I'm a good enough teacher and trainer to make someone as good as me, and I want to give them all the tools to be better than me. Hopefully, they can be better. So, anytime team I've ever built, I try to be the weakest person on the team. If I'm the weakest person on the team, we're gonna be pretty damn good. That's how I feel about it.
That's like a take on you never want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to try to be the dumbest person in the room.
Right?
If you're the dumbest person in that room, you're in the right room.
Yeah.
That's a deep take on it. I want to be the weakest on the team or something. That's a cool take. Well, I do have to ask this. I want to get back to hiring and stuff, but I do have to ask Marigold. Where did that name come from? How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so when I
Cool
was
name.
starting my home inspection business, I just didn't want it to be Curtis's Home Inspections or Larson Home Inspection. I mean, like those sound awful. I mean, if your names are Larson or Curtis, like I feel bad for you because I have both of those names. But so I didn't want that. I want to be quite as mom and pop. And so I was trying to just sprinkle in something different, give it a little bit of branding and something different. And coincidentally, both myself and my wife grew up on Marigold Street. We were both in the same community, but on
Oh,
two
that's
different
cool.
streets, and we didn't know each other till, well, I mean, until the sixth grade, so pretty young. But we went to different schools and stuff like that. But we both grew up on Marigold Street, so Marigold's just always been home to us, and that's how we came up with the name.
That's cool. On a non-related thing, but kind of related. We grew up. Our first house on Zachary Avenue, so our first dog was Zach, and now
Hmm.
we have Ziggy and Zoe. So it's like every dog has a Z name, just because we wanted to pay homage. So
That's cool.
but Well, so you've come a long way. Tell us how big your team is now. You got quite a few. And I know you got some marketing folks. How's what from 2018? What's the team Marigold look like 2023?
Yeah, 2018 is just me. Now we are, I, I don't know the exact count, but I think we have 25 full-time employees that work for
Wow,
Marigold Home Inspection. So we have um, 12 inspectors. We have 3 ancillary techs. So the way we structure our business, we have people that we train to do multiple ancillaries, whether it's water testing, radon, sewer scopes. We try to have them come in so our inspectors can just inspect. And since we're in a metro area, it's not super expensive to have these other techs come out. Um, and then, so we have 3 full-time and 2 part-time ancillary techs. Um, we have an operations manager, Brittany, who's been with me. She was my second hire. Um, Brittany is my wife's best friend, incredibly intelligent business person and just like wise person in general. And luckily she was coming off like being a stay-at-home mom. And so I suckered her into being like, hey, can you do these projects that I don't have time for 10 hours a week? And she was like, oh yeah. I mean, do you have enough hours for 10 hours a week? I'm like, I think so. And now she doesn't quite work full time. She works 30 hours a week for us. We wish she'd work 40. We always wish that. And but we have more work than she could ever accomplish in a single week for her. But she's our operations manager, kind of oversees HR, payroll, as well as like anything back end, any automations that we have. She's like our automations master. And then we also have Sarah, who's our client care manager. We have 2 more client care coordinators that are underneath her, which do all of our scheduling. Um, and then we have Ron, who is he's our sales rep, and we have a part-time sales rep, Zach, as well.
awesome. You touched on that stay-at-home mom. We've hired. I think that is a fantastic resource. I mean,
Oh,
there's so many very qualified people that may have had a corporate job, whatever. But when they have kids, they want to stay at home with the kids, or the kids go to school. They want to be there at 3 o'clock when the bus comes. And I just think that's a huge. And if they're, even at home, they have internet, phone. Yeah, I've always thought that's a tremendous resource, and I don't want to say taking advantage of that. That sounds bad, but we've certainly used that resource as well. Well, tell us a little bit, Curtis, about your marketing. What does your marketing look like, and what for any listeners out there that it's always about getting more business, right? So
mhm.
what advice? Tell us about your marketing, and what advice would you give to the average inspector out there? Trying to drum up more business.
Yeah, so the best marketing that I ever did, the best ROI that I have on any marketing, for sure is going to have coffees, lunches, happy hours. Um, Ever since the beginning, when I started out, my goal was to have I'd meet 2 new agents a week for coffee, lunch, or happy hour. Um, and if I met 2 a week, I was like, hey, once I got to sit down and actually tell them my story and who I am as a person, not so much about inspections. Like there's a lot of people that can inspect homes. I'm just being blunt, but like there's good inspectors, there's bad inspectors, there's good realtors, there's bad realtors, there's good accountants, there's bad accountants, there's good baseball players, there's bad baseball players. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's more, can these people connect to you? So like if I could sit down and have a conversation and tell them about my family and camping and we could have a connection on that or something else in their lives, that was the best ROI I ever had. Those people became loyal to me. They're still loyal to me today. And I'm loyal to them. Like they call and ask for a little favor, like the people I know, I'm more than happy to give that extra favor. I hit a point as a one-man inspection firm that like I couldn't meet with more realtors because if I met with a realtor and I said, hey, I'm gonna be there on Thursday morning, I meant I didn't have an inspection on Thursday morning and I'm missing out on $400, $500, $600. Um, so the best thing I did was hire Ron. Ron is our relationship manager, we call him. No, he's not a matchmaker. He just does growth and sales. So, but Ron has been outstanding. And really realistically with Ron, I found him, he came out of the service industry. And I felt like we had like a mutual connection. We were friends, our kids were friends. And I was like, like I want to hire Ron, but I don't I don't want to like hate Ron. Like if this doesn't work out, I don't want to like me and Ron
Yeah, you
not
don't
be able
want
to
to
see
mess up
each
the
other in
friendship.
public and be like, oh, but
Yeah,
we haven't had any of that. And part of I think what makes Ron as successful as he is that like I understand that his attributes and his strengths are different than mine potentially. And he is outstanding at connecting with people, and his likability is just pretty incredible. And so he does an excellent job of just meeting people, going to events. Like he loves being in front of people. He loves um, like being at happy hours and coffees and just getting to know people for who they are. And I think that personal connection has always been the best marketing. Now we do other like print marketing and like we do real producers and some of those things that get you in the room with the people that you want to know. But I still think the best thing you can do is to be real and one-on-one and in person.
100%. Well, I'm going to ask you a differentiation question. But before I do that, I want to share. We've been talking a lot about this in our business where, when you put yourself in the shoes of a buyer or a realtor who's getting ready to make a purchase, they need an inspector. Just
Mhm.
like any buyer, let's say you're going to buy, I don't know, a new phone or something, um, anything, a car. I mean, so there's several factors, whether you know it or not, that go into which you ultimately choose, right?
Mhm.
There's quality, customer service, price, um, reviews that might kind of relate to some of the other ones, bells and whistles, this, that, and the other. And kind of what we've been talking about in our business is, if you don't win on any of the other things, you have to default to price. And
Yep.
that you don't want to compete on that. And if you can win on some of the others or most of the others, you can charge a higher price. Because obviously, I mean, why do people buy a BMW, when they could buy a Ford Fusion? I mean,
Mm.
does the same thing, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously. So I guess my question is to you. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your interview there, but that was something we've been talking about a lot in our company. What are the things that Marigold uh, differentiates? Or you obviously got competition, and and I got competition. They're good. They're good. I don't say anything bad about them. But what do you guys do different or to try to win that that contest? Sometimes, other than price, we don't want to win on price. I mean, it's a race to
Yeah.
the bottom.
It is. However, I will say if you're getting in, market yourself in a way, price wise, that if you're just getting into inspections, that hey, I might be on the lower end of average. And like what I strategically did when I was first getting in is I made larger blocks before the price changed. So like I said, it's the same price for a single family home inspection up to 3,000 square feet, and then to 5,000 square feet. And then no one ever gave me a house over 5,000 square feet when I was first starting out. I mean,
Right.
most of the stuff I got was garbage. But and that's how you cut your teeth and you learn. But I would say currently the best ways that Marigold differentiates ourselves is that we are extremely flexible. We try to never, if we can say yes, we try to say yes as much as we can. Um, so we guarantee availability within 48 hours. That's been a huge differentiator as we talk to agents. And that's a challenging thing to do because we've had explosive growth. Every single year, we've grown over 100%. I think this year we're on pace to do over 3,000 inspections. And this has been the most challenging year in order to make sure that um, we have that availability to our agents and to our new agents, our existing and new. Um, but the way I've done that is I've said, hey, if we have reached 80% capacity, as far as our inspectors and we're filling 80% of the slots, we start hiring the next person. So we always stay ahead of that. We also try to make sure that we have as many ancillary services in-house as possible because people and agents, the consumer agents don't want to call multiple people to get things booked. So being able to say that, hey, we can do radon, sewer, chimney, water testing, well yield testing, all those things are extremely valuable to the real estate transaction and help them have an educated view of what that home has to offer. So it's been really challenging to do that as well and to expand to those and actually do them at a level that can compete with people that specialize in sewer scopes and specialize in radon testing and mitigation. So we've had to work really hard to just up our knowledge and our game in those areas. But you can also do that through other finding service providers that provide that for you. That's how we did it for a long time with both radon and sewers. Like I didn't want to be picking up radon monitors on Saturday morning when I was trying to just like sleep in until 11 before I ran off to do an inspection because I said I could do it that weekend.
Yeah.
So I we just used another company, and yeah, I made a little less money, but I also picked services that made us look really good. And then another differentiator that we've done that since the beginning of Marigold is that we've said we go anywhere. We go anywhere in Minnesota. They're now into Western Wisconsin, and they just have different licensing requirements. But saying that we'll go anywhere in Minnesota is always something that perks up realtors' ears because in
Yeah.
Minnesota,
Wow. That's pretty. Do
yeah,
you pay you guys any more for that? I mean, I love that. I'm just like trying to think how I could implement that because my guys would be like,
so we pay an hourly model. So if they're
okay.
driving, they're getting paid. But even before that, what we used to do is we used to compensate if there was a mileage fee, they just got the whole mileage fee. And usually that mileage fee is designed to cover um, that wage essentially. And I always saw it as like some work is better than no work. We talk about like Worthington, Minnesota is 3 hours away. People will be like, "You're going to drive to Worthington for one inspection?" And I was like, "Yeah, I get to call my mom and catch up with her. I get to call my friends. I get to listen to a podcast." And I always explained it like if someone said 180 miles away is a check for $500, would you go get it? And some people wouldn't, but I always will. I'll
I
always go
would.
pick up that check. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we've always done that. And we don't have a lot of homes that are outside our metro area. We're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, for those that don't know. And I mean, we have a couple million people in that area. So we have probably 2.5 million people between Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the surrounding suburbs. And the remainder of the state, like they're just one-offs is what they are. But when I go into realtor meetings and I'd say that, they'd be like, "Ooh, my uncle's looking at buying a cabin and I don't want to pick up some person that
They
has
don't
one
not do it.
review or zero reviews or whatever." And then that's the only person that I know that's 2.5 hours away. So to know that they could send me, they would do that. And usually when I'd go and do that one that was a long ways away, I'd end up getting all their business in the cities as well.
That's awesome, man. And speaking of reviews, when I went to Google you, it looks like you're pushing 1,000 reviews and you got a 5.0, which is pretty freaking incredible. I
Yeah.
have a 4.9, and most people I know like have a 4.9 because you got a few unhappy campers, but golly, man, that's pretty good to have 900 and some reviews, almost 1,000, and keep it at 5.0. You must really, really keep them happy.
We work really hard to do that. I mean, that's customer service is a top priority that we coach on. We coach all our inspectors on a weekly basis on like uh, one area of how we can handle customer complaints. So being able to deflect things that like could explode if we don't explain them right in communication, that's key as an inspector and setting proper expectations. There also are tools that really help you. So if you're looking to, I mean, I'm not getting paid by any of these companies, but I'm just going to tell you the places that set me apart were one, Blip Reviews. Blip Reviews did an outstanding job of just getting us reviews. Before that, I had like a manual system where I used to make everything look like it was automated, but it was like the Wizard of Oz. If you got behind the curtain, it was just Curtis. There's no one else automating all this stuff.
Pulling all the levers and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. I just made it look like I used Google templates and I sent them all manually. And at that point, I was getting reviews on about 10% of that I would
Same.
send.
I did.
And
We did the
now,
exact same thing.
yeah. And once we went to Blip, I mean, we're well over 30%, which is we've never been able to touch that 40%, but it's pretty incredible the way they've systematically set everything up to put us in a position to win.
Yeah, they do a great job. Well, just a couple more questions, then we'll go to lightning round. You touched on complaints. I mean, anybody out there who's listening, if you're doing enough business, you're going to get complaints. I don't care, and if you say you don't, you're lying. If anybody tells you they've never had a complaint and they're doing 400 inspections a year or more, they're not telling you the truth. It's just a certain percent. So let's say I'm gonna pretend like, all right, I call in Marigold Home Inspections. Hey, you inspected a house for me, and we just closed, and I moved in, and the air conditioner wasn't working, and I called a guy out here, and he said, "Oh, this thing needs to be replaced, and your home inspector should have said that. What are you going to do about it?" I'm gonna pass it
Yeah,
off to
that's that is a process that takes a long time to build. I will
you.
say that. The best thing that we did is we created a client concern form. I think we initially did it through Google Forms, and now we've moved into other avenues to actually track that and do it a little bit better. But the client concern form, what it does is it it helps alleviate that person that answered the phone that had nothing to do with the inspection except for maybe booking it. So it
Right.
alleviates them from the
They
pressure of
get
having to answer
beat
this.
up on a little bit for sure.
Mhm. And you're talking to someone that's never been a home inspector and they don't know who did what at that house. So we say, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to send you over the client concern form. And what we need you to do is fill that out. And filling that out, so if it ever goes to an insurance claim, that way we're going to be able to have all the information. And we're also going to be able to expedite that process. And they're like, oh, okay. And then it's immediately after they fill that out, or if we get off the phone, we end up calling the agent just to notify them if they were the buying agent, just be like, hey, we heard from so and so, and they are unhappy. How can we, like, we're just letting you know that this happened, this is how we're taking care of it. And then after that, once it's filled out, and it goes right to our inspector manager, Blake. He then immediately will call them. I will tell you that sometimes these people are like super hot. And so if you want like a little trick of the trade that I've used to stay away from the people that are really, really upset and to like bring them down just a little bit, is we call them right away, but we use slide dial. Slide dial, what it does is it skips right to their voicemail. And the reason we do that is because then we can send it out. And it's going to skip
Know
everything.
somebody's on it or have they've been heard. So it's I think it stops the
Right,
escalation.
right,
It stops the bleeding at that point. They're still gonna be mad, but it's not gonna keep escalating. Is the way I look at it.
correct. And we'll just be like, hey, we tried to reach out to you. Um, just so you know that we're looking into this. I have to connect with the inspector and then um, read your client concern all the way. And then once we review the report, talk to the inspector, we're going to reach back out to you within 24 hours. At that time, sometimes they call back right away and they're immediately more relaxed, but you can have that same conversation. We push it out another 24 hours. And that gives us time to review, talk to our inspector, hopefully is inspecting. So they aren't available at that moment. So we can't just speak on their behalf. We don't know if there's an obstacle that we weren't able to achieve. Like we didn't gain access to the attic. We weren't able to see that crawl space or something was blocking something.
Yeah.
So we want to know what was accessible, what was not. And we should be able to look at that in the report, but we don't want to answer right on the spot. And then generally within 24, 48 hours, we're able to come to a full resolution with the person, whether, hey, sometimes you're refunding them to save your name. Sometimes you're refunding them to save the relationship with a realtor that you want to maintain, and it's going to reflect poorly on them. And sometimes we're just like, no, we're in the right, and we're not doing that. And we did call it out in this way. And sometimes we just goof up. We just had an instance where I mean, a lot of inspectors are going to be able to relate to this, where one of our inspectors overflowed an upstairs sink, leaked down into the main level, and I mean, we had to end up sending in a painter there and just getting it repainted. We had another one a few months ago where GFCI tripped and we didn't. It was a newer inspector and they did not follow protocols in terms of talking to the listing agent, and it wouldn't have been a big deal because we left a note and said, hey, GFCI tripped, we couldn't find the reset. However, it's connected to their freezer. So a bunch of meat went bad, and it wouldn't have been a big deal except for the people were on vacation. They didn't come back for 7, 10 days.
Oh, so it stunk.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's how they opened it, but yeah, I mean, it was a large impact. And so we're like, hey, what else could we do that? And then we also coach up on every client concern that comes in. We don't. It's not to shame an inspector; it's to increase awareness to the whole team.
Yeah, I can understand why they were mad because we went to the beach one year and our refrigerator went kaput that we didn't realize. And this was in July. And we come home, and as soon as we opened the door, it's just like dead fish smell. Like, oh, it was horrible. And oh man, it was terrible. And you know what? It was a freaking. Well, I should have said that. It was a daggone Viking refrigerator too. The
Oh
thing's like
yeah,
a ten
yeah,
thousand dollar refrigerator,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I am not a fan of that at all. I mean, we got these like these super expensive appliances aren't any better than Whirlpool or Frigidaire or,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So, all right, one last serious question. You talked about hiring people, and I wanted to go back to that for a second because I know a lot of guys struggle with that. Um, and probably when you hired your first couple of folks, like a lot of us, it was just kind of like, I'm sure, all right, just follow me.
Mhm.
Do what I do. You don't really have a program or a protocol or anything. It's just apprentice. That's all there is. But when you start, you even said it. It's a lot harder to hire that first one or two than it was to hire 12, 13, 14, because then it's like you start to get a little bit more of a process. So what does that look like today? Like, I interview with Marigold. I'm like your guy was. I'm out of school, lots of book knowledge, ready to start. But I, how do I get from the interview to doing inspections on my own with Marigold? What's
Yeah.
that process look like?
Today, what that process looks like is we are culture focused over knowledge focused. We're firm believers in that if you can be a good team player, if you can communicate with others, there's a lot of opportunity for you, more so than just having a certification or passing a test. There's a lot of people that pass tests and like just over magnify issues that are simple fixes. So we look for culture fits. We also have just like an online application process. We try to make this as much of a job at Marigold, like an actual real job instead of just being like, and when we started out, like Blake can attest to this. I mean, he was my first employee. Like I couldn't offer him a real job. It was either he was going to be a contractor or what I offered him was like kind of had it smelled like a job. It may have looked like a job, but it really wasn't a job. I mean, he was an employee, but I couldn't provide health benefits. I couldn't provide all those other things. So that gives us a big advantage with candidates right now. Is like if people that need those things can come to us and they can receive them. But then we have an online application. We have a phone screening just to make sure, hey, this person kind of seems like they fit what we're doing. And then we bring them in for a first interview. And generally it's not just with one person. It's usually their direct manager and then myself. Try to get a read on them and then try to figure out, hey, is that a good fit for Marigold? Because every single time I've hired out of um, like just I need this person, it's never
Didn't
worked
work
out.
out.
Never
Never.
works out.
I always say I made my best hires when I didn't need them.
Hmm. Right?
Yeah. So it's kind of like, and I always say too, there's like, I always say built through the draft or free agency. Free agency is like somebody who's been out there and they've had a business, they've tried it, but they decided they wanted to do inspections. They didn't want to do marketing and all this other stuff. And then the draft was like somebody that you brought up, trained them from the get go, or they just got out of school, but they've never. And I've had good and bad luck with both both ways.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know.
What's your preference, Preston?
I don't really have one. Well, had really good and really bad from both. I've probably had a little better luck with free agents who have tried it on their own and realized how difficult it was. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
they seem to be, not always, but on average, a little bit more like appreciative, understanding. You know what I mean? Like, where
Yeah.
sometimes like a new guy coming through the draft, he just sees how much you're charging for this inspection, and then how much they're getting paid. And they're like, "Rrr." And I kind of feel like somebody who's done it on their own realized, well, there's a lot more to this. There's insurance, there's marketing, there's just because we're getting paid $500 for the inspection
Right.
doesn't mean Curtis is putting $500 in his pocket. Not even close. you
And
know.
what I wonder is I have the exact opposite is what I would say. Like I think building to the draft has been better for us.
Really.
However,
Not
I
that
wonder
good
if
with
that's
that.
like you're a licensed state, we're an unlicensed state. Does it have anything to do with that? I mean, like that's where we're getting people. transitioning. We don't get people coming to us that have tried home inspecting on their own. I've only had two, and neither of them have fully worked out. And
Hmm.
so that's been different for us, but it's not a common thing in here in Minnesota, where I think it would be significantly more common from your region.
Yeah, we're licensed, and in South Carolina's licensed because I'm in North Carolina, but I'm right on we go in South Carolina too. Both are licensed. And starting out, I thought that was a good thing, because it was another barrier to entry. I thought, anything that you have to have a license for. And there are some good things about it, but all those guys listening, if you're licensed or unlicensed, there's a downside of that too, because sometimes you get these people on the board or Napoleon that want to start
Yep.
making rules, to regulate like competition or how you can market, and it starts getting a little silly, I will say, but I don't want to say
Yeah.
anymore because I might get a letter. All right, well, let's go to the lightning round. A little bit of fun. There's a game I like to called This or That. So I go through two things, and this is just to get to know you a little bit more personally. And you say which one you prefer, phone call or text,
Phone call, 100%. I hate texting.
cardio or weights.
Uh, I'd say weights now. I don't like running anymore. I'm getting older.
Would you rather use Facebook or Instagram?
Instagram by far.
iOS or Android?
Um, I'm now converted to iOS. I was always Android, but I think if my wife wasn't a part of it, I'd be neutral on the fact matter.
My whole family, first of all, is iOS. I'm the only holdout, and I'm a PC and an Android guy. I was an iOS up until I think the 7 or something. When they got rid of the audio jack, that was what, because I love was having been able to buy cheap headphones, but
Yeah, you can't fly Delta and listen to your phone anymore.
I know, right? You got it. You got it. Would you rather go to a big party or a small gathering?
Depends on the mood I'm in, but probably big party.
Football or basketball?
Basketball to play, football to watch.
Um, Flip flops or tennis shoes?
Tennis shoes,
Tablet or computer?
computer.
Let's see if I can find some of these other ones here. There's a couple other ones. Um, would you? Oh, that's the last one. I'm gonna ask that one for the last one. Would Christmas Vacation or Elf?
Elf. I love
Um,
that.
car or truck?
Uh, Truck,
Ocean or mountains?
mountains.
Day at the beach or day at a theme park?
Oh, beach all day.
Yeah, same. Um, I don't know if you're old enough for this one, but Animal House or Caddyshack?
Oh, Caddyshack. I love Caddyshack.
Caddyshack. All right. I love Caddyshack. Um, all right. I don't know if your wife will see this. Celebrity crush. Maybe when you were younger, before you got married.
I don't know. I've never been into celebrities. I don't know. I'm not even like, my wife wouldn't even be bothered. I guess I just don't really have a celebrity crush that I can think of off the top of my head. My wife would be like, "This is who it is." I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of pretty people out there. That's what I'll say.
If you could have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
I think I would like. I always I rephrase this question a lot of times when I'm talking to people. I'm like, whose life could you exchange with if you want to? I think it would be Anthony Bourdain. Although he had like some super dark moments, like I think I would love to have lived his life in terms of just like seeing different cultures, different foods, different people, and the travel and just exposure to the world that's so large around us. I think it would be super fun.
And not to get off topic, but him. There's so many like artists and just incredibly talented, creative people that have like this tortured life on the backside or dark side. And I've sort of done a little bit of study into this because I mean I'm a little bit creative and my mom's a little bit creative. And there's sort of it's something with creative people that it's like their brain is like super creative, but it can go creative in a dark way sometimes. And they saw it, they call it the creative curse or something. So anyway, I think that Anthony Bourdain had it, and some of the, Ernest Hemingway, I mean, wrote some of the greatest books of all time, and put a shotgun in his mouth at 60 some years old. Why would you do that?
Yeah,
But
right.
anyway, and yeah, people you would think would have it all together, money, fame, all that stuff. But anyway, don't want to leave on a down note. Last question. What is the craziest or weirdest thing you or one of your guys have ever found on a home inspection?
Found? Ooh, I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff. I used to do like this creepy dolls thing on Instagram anytime I run into them. I think the craziest thing we did on a home inspection is when Blake first started with me, Minnesota, everything freezes over. There was a house that was on an island, and they had me as in March, so the ice is starting to thaw, and we had to like they couldn't find anyone to inspect this house on this island, and I'm like, well, can I drive my truck out there? So I drove my truck out on the lake. Um,
You drove
and we
on a
get
like
out there.
frozen lake?
Frozen Lake, yeah, yeah. So we're driving out. And
Oh,
I'm not like
gee,
an ice fisherman. I know you think I'm from Minnesota, so like all we do is hang out on frozen lakes.
that
I'm
is
not
so
that guy.
foreign. Just
Okay.
like somebody from North Carolina. But I know
So
it happens up there.
so I drive out on this lake, we inspect it. The buyer is crazy. She's an absolute crazy lady. She's like, hey, if I blow out this wall, could we make like a bar that overlooks the lake and like stuff? I'm like, this has nothing to do with me, lady. Just like I'm like, let's get out of here. And then right before we're leaving, she's like, hey, can you do a radon test here? I'm like, oh, yeah, I really don't want to drive back on the lake again. So I decided, yeah, we can do the radon test. I'm like, I'll take the $200. So we set up the radon test, drive off. And then 2 days later, I'm supposed to come back, and we have in March in Minnesota, it could be -10, and or we could have like a snowstorm, or it could be 50, 60 degrees. And
And
it's
it was
60
50 to
degrees. And
60.
so it's 60 degrees, everything is thawing out, and there's just like water on top of this lake. So I call my buddy PK, Pat, and I go, hey
I
Pat,
gotta get the
he's the ice fisherman. I'm like, is this okay driving? He's like, oh yeah, you're good. He's like, and then I'm like going on, it's like just making noises,
Oh
frozen
my
water makes
God,
noises.
dude.
I'm like, I'm
Couldn't
not a
do
big fan of this. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. Just roll down your windows. If you go through, then just say, at least your windows are open. I'm like, what? I'm halfway across this lake now. So
You
I'm like
told me I'd
driving.
be fine.
Uh-huh. So I called Blake and I'm like, you need to stay on the phone with me until I get off this lake. So I think
Wow,
that was
did
the
you make
craziest
it?
thing we did. Yeah, yeah. I'm still here. I'm still here. Yeah.
Man, it's too bad
And
that
it
was
probably
probably
was,
prior to all the videos and stuff. I bet.
what'd you say?
Was that prior to like all the everybody doing TikToks and reels and everything?
No, but I was scared. I wouldn't
Too
have been doing any
concerned.
TikTok. I just wanted to talk to Blake. He was my safe blanket.
Man, imagine if your truck would have went down. And I don't even know. I mean, you probably got to pay to get that thing pulled out of there. I
Oh,
don't know.
definitely. That happens quite a bit up here. I mean, frequently enough in the winter. But yeah, it was one of those things that was we've never done it since. We've never been requested to do it since either. It was a unique situation. Like I said, we say yes anytime we can.
I hear you, bro. Yeah, that's right. You started with that. You always say yes. You ended with that. That was great. All right. Well, Blake, thank you so much. Now, well, first of all the listeners who listen to this, or if you saw it on YouTube, let's go give Blake some love. I think it helps his algorithm a little bit. So tell us website, Facebook page, Instagram, so you can follow, like, subscribe. YouTube? What's your real estate properties out there on the internet?
Yeah, Marigold Home Inspections is our name. We're out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Marigoldhomeinspections.com. Yes, it's really long. I wish I could have recreated that URL at some point, but we're stuck with it now at this point. And then we also are on Marigold Home Inspections on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Awesome. Well, go everybody that listen to this, go like it, subscribe. Are you on YouTube as well, or you have a YouTube channel? Or
Nope. My personal Instagram, if anyone's interested in that, is Curtis W. Larson. And yeah, but outside of that, I think we have a YouTube channel, but it's just a couple training videos. Nothing special yet. We're trying to be like you, grow up to be like you, Preston, someday.
no, please, please. Well, anybody wants to follow you, I'm sorry, like follow up with you, is there, can they email you? Is it on your thing? Or if anybody has a radon test out on a thawing lake that they need some advice,
Yeah.
how could they get in touch with you?
Curtis with a C at marigoldhomeinspections.com. Otherwise, they're free to text me. My phone number is 612-708-4507.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Curtis. And I'll probably catch you in the next pod meeting we have. But I appreciate it. I'll catch you on the flip side, brother.
Thank you.